All right, everyone. Welcome to a live Third Apron podcast. I am your host, Yossi Goslin. Feels like Thursday now with this flurry of trades we just got, but no, I have to take a step back. It's still Tuesday. We just saw, I already lost count, like 5 trades all of a sudden. I think 3 of them maybe involving the Bulls. We have a trade that's probably going to happen between the Cavs and the Clippers. I thought we might dedicate most of the time just talking about that, but I think we need to start with the big shocker. The Grizzlies, they traded Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Jazz. I want to say that I'm now ahead in our draft. I think I drafted Jaren and Schroeder. I'll have to double check. Me and Sam earlier this last month, I think we did a draft with categories that Sam organized, and we picked players that we could see getting drafted, and they have to fit a certain category.
Getting traded, you mean? Players we could see getting traded.
Yeah. But I think you had Jaden Ivey, or did I have Jaden Ivey?
I'm looking up the board right now. Okay. Jaden Ivey, you had Jaden Ivey, so you got that. My first pick was Kuminga. I can't believe I might miss.
Wow, that's crazy. And then wait, so do I have?
My second pick was Anthony Davis. My third pick was Zion. You had Anthony Simons too. You're killing me.
Wow. Okay, so am I at 4-0 right now?
Yeah, I think you're killing me. I don't think I have anyone yet.
Yeah, I got Jaren for like surprise player to get traded. I was out the category.
Keon Ellis too. I had Mike Conley. Okay, I'm on the board.
All right, so you guys can go back and look at that episode. So yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. I had it in the back of my mind that he'd get traded, not necessarily at the trade deadline, but like sometime in the next 6 months or so. So the Pistons seemed like a team that would have made a lot of sense. The Warriors, if they don't get Giannis. The Jazz are absolutely not a team I think either of us considered, especially that they are aggressively sitting out players, listing players with illnesses, whatever it might be. They're resting Keontae George. Like, they're not even hiding it anymore. They're giving Keontae George, of all players, the rest designation, a third-year player being rested. So, just before I'll toss it out to you, but just really quickly answer me this. How much Jaren Jackson do you think we're even going to see this season?
I think he will like wear the jersey for a night. Like, I think he'll play a few games. I sort of thought with Trae Young, they were going to make a big deal of rolling him out for a few games and then they were going to put him on ice. The Wizards just said like, no, you're gone. I think the Jazz will probably roll him out there for a few nights. They're going to make a big deal of this. They want to like make the appearance of like, look at us, we're trying to win. And then like, he's going to have a hangnail that he's going to require surgery for, and that'll be that. So I don't expect them to play him much. Just in case anybody doesn't know, the Jazz owe their top 8 protected pick to the Thunder this year. They are currently in 6th place in the tank standings. They have a 3-win cushion over number 7, and I think there's a big clump after that. Memphis obviously is now going to be coming for them in the tank standings, and a few other teams in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range are looking like pretty dangerous tankers. So I don't think the Jazz are going to mess around too much. I know there's been some internal pressure there to like start winning, and I know they obviously got docked for sitting Lowry. Like, I think are they the only team or one of the only teams that's actually been hit by the player participation policy? They got a big fine last year. So I think they'll like make a show of starting him a few games. It's not going to be long. Like, he's not going to play much for them.
There's definitely been more. I can't pinpoint who they were, but yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about the like tanking and then just not even necessarily the Jazz situation where they are trying to position themselves for a high draft pick. But if Giannis doesn't get traded, if AD doesn't get traded, John Moran doesn't get traded, all these guys are going to get shut down most likely to preserve their trade value, prevent any major injury. So now with Jaren, that's not a player at all who was heading in that direction. I think Memphis probably was going to still keep playing him. It wasn't going to hurt their tank. I think they have a lot more issues on that roster. So now that he's gone, unfortunately, we're not going to see him too much for the rest of the season. But just when you looked at that, the main things they got are they got salary filler for the most part, Anderson, Niang, and then they got 2 interesting prospects Taylor Hendricks has just not gotten.
No.
He has not taken off. Well, coming back from that leg injury from last year. Walter Clayton, interesting guy, just like a nice veteran to have, I think, for the Grizzlies in their situation. And then 3 first-round picks. Off the top of my head, one of those draft picks really stand out to me. So how do you feel overall about the value that they got?
Okay, you're missing one, I think, pretty critical component of this.
The trade exception.
They get a $28.8 million trade exception. They're going to get another first-round pick out of that, I think. Like, this is really going to be 4 picks. I suspect Jakob Poeltl is the player they're going to take in, but it might be somebody else. I think Bobby Marks had that as the biggest trade exception in NBA history. They are now the most powerful cap dumping ground in the entire NBA, and they're $34 million below the tax, so they can take in the full amount while still staying below the tax. Do they have cap space now even? Like, they're very, very financially flexible. That's going to be valuable. The players, I like Walter Clayton, and I think he's the sort of player that Memphis has done a good job developing. Like, they do a good job with small guards, Scottie Pippen being the other one that comes to mind. Taylor Hendricks is a lottery ticket, whatever. Like, I think he's promising. He was, I think, the number 8 pick or number 9 pick, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't expect much just because he's not done much this year coming off that injury, but Memphis is so good at developing players. It's whatever. The conversation here is really about the picks. 2031 Phoenix, I think we both think is very good. I know I've advocated for the Suns in the past. There is a big difference between Phoenix's 2027 pick, which is next year, and Phoenix's 2031 pick, which is in 5 years. As fun as this feel-good story has been, the Suns do not have any draft control between now and then. Devin Booker is going to be 34 at that point. Dylan Brooks will be 35. I do not have that much faith in the Suns being good 5 years from now. I suspect that pick will be very valuable. Lakers 2027, top 4 protected. I don't think it's like as bad as some people are pointing out. Like, I think because the Lakers are so cautious and prioritizing 2027 cap space so much, there is a world in which, like, they're thinking, oh, we're waiting for Jokic with cap space, or we're waiting for Giannis with cap space or whatever. And next year's team is kind of a hodgepodge of 1-year deals, and LeBron doesn't come back, and then Luka misses 20 games, and like you blink and they're a play-in team, and that's the 18th pick. Like, fine, whatever. The swing pick is the 2027 best of Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota. On the surface, I think we assume Cleveland and Minnesota will be good next year. I think that's probably true, but I think when you're talking about best of 3 teams, it is nice to have the upside value of, like, what if one of those teams catches the injury bug, or one of those teams has some surprising transaction that doesn't work out and both of them are trying to do stuff. Like, the upside there is valuable, but what we assume is that pick is going to be Utah's 2027 pick. For this trade, I don't want to say for this trade to work for the Grizzlies, but like the highest upside outcomes for this trade for the Grizzlies would involve the Memphis pick in 2020 or the Utah pick in 2027 to be very good, to be in the lottery somewhere. Utah is betting that their pick is going to be not great next year, so they're comfortable giving it up. I lean more on the Utah side. I think the Jazz are going to be good. I think they have such an easy, like, there's such low-hanging fruit with the effort that they have taken to lose games. If they are trying to win games next year, I think that immediately takes them from, like, lottery alone up to, like, in the play-in. Adding Jaren on top of that is significant. You'll get more development from Keontae George and Ace Bailey. And we think they're going to have a top 8 pick this year. I still feel pretty good about where Utah's going to be next year.
Yeah.
We saw Houston jump up last year from the lottery into the top of the West, San Antonio this year. I could see Utah being that team next year. So I don't think that pick is that great. I have one more thing I want to say, though. The 2027 pick, or 2027 draft, by all accounts, is terrible. I want to talk about the concept of bad drafts, because I think it's very easy to dismiss a draft class a year and a half out. I just want to talk about what the recent bad drafts have actually produced. 2013 was supposed to be a terrible draft. Nobody knew who the number 1 pick was. Outside of the lottery, we had Giannis Antetokounmpo and Rudy Gobert. 2020 was supposed to be a bad draft. Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey turned into a very good draft. 2024, the jury is obviously still out. I would be very happy to have drafted Stephon Castle at the top of a draft. I would be very happy with Alex Sarr at the top of a draft. I think Reed Shepherd, it hasn't quite borne out yet, but I think Reed Shepherd is going to be a very, very good player. My theory with quote unquote bad drafts is that except for like 2000, which was historically terrible, even draft classes we think of as weak tend to be better than we think. We think there's usually more talent in those draft classes than we assume. The issue is that it's uncertain, that we don't go into that draft saying we know who the top 4 or 5 guys are. Those top 4 or 5 guys exist. They just might get drafted at 11 or 19 or 21 or whatever. And the reason I bring this up is the Grizzlies are maybe the best drafting team in the NBA. I mean, not as good as the Thunder, but like they're one of the better drafting teams in the NBA. If you give Zach Kleiman and his Memphis scouting staff all of these resources, I trust them to make the most of an uncertain draft class, whereas I might not give that credit to other front offices. So I think the return for Memphis here is fine.
Yeah, I would say that if you're comparing it to the Bane trade, one, it's one fewer pick, unless, you want to consider Taylor Hendricks and Walter Clayton right now combined to be like a first round pick worth of value. And then when you look at the quality of the picks, the Suns one, I think, really jumps out, especially because the time is on there. I know the Suns are doing well now, but they still have very little upside to really improve the roster meaningfully over the next few seasons. So that I think will be valuable, not just when it actually conveys, but maybe there's going to be a point when the Suns are really bad and the Grizzlies can really do something with it. They now are really betting against the Suns. They've got equity against them this year, which isn't really going to matter too much, but they also have a pick swap in 2030 with the Suns. I think they might have another one. I can't really recall. So I think they'll make it work. I'm with you that I trust the Grizzlies front office enough to make the most out of these, find value everywhere. Even if the 27 draft isn't that strong, like you are alluding to, I think they're going to find a lot of value. And now I just want to pull out their draft pick situation because they have multiple firsts right now in this upcoming draft. They have 2 in the next draft, 3 in the next draft, actually. And then they've got 2 in 2032 and 2031. So I think by having multiple firsts next year, they're going to be in a position where they could try to leverage those and move up, try to maximize kind of add some swaps on them, try to get the best pick they possibly can. I don't think it's more so about loading up on prospects in 2027. Obviously, their own first round pick right now projects to be the most valuable of the bunch, but maybe there's something they could do as far as next year with if there's a trade, a pick swap they could do with the other 2 they have.
They traded up for Cedric Howard. Like they could just trade up on draft night. If like they're at 15 and the guy they like is available at 10, that's another option for them. I like that Zach Kleiman now has the maneuverability, not to get to the absolute top of the draft, but to emphasize the guys that he wants maybe a little bit later on and just kind of cherry pick because I trust his ability to scout.
Yeah. And let's see what they end up doing as far as getting more picks. As you mentioned, they've got that big $28 million trade exception. So I've got them right now, what is that? $34 million below the tax. The way basically like the way the trade's working, like all those smaller salary players match for the other smaller salary players that they're getting. And it's basically on their perspective, Jaren Jackson for, I think, just Taylor Hendricks. So that's how they create such a big trade exception. Twitter's been a huge flurry right now, but you mentioned Jakob Poeltl. I saw Brett Siegel also mention that the Grizzlies are now a team actually in play. Yeah, I think like when the trade actually happened, he mentioned that they are in play for Jakob Poeltl. Oh, you know what? I just realized. Actually, no, never mind. They're actually under the cap after doing this trade. So they could technically aggregate all these players for something else, but I don't think that matters because the main thing is that they got that big trade exception. So Memphis is in a position where they really have no bad money on their books. Like they have another year of KCP. We'll get into John Morant probably shortly, try to touch that a little bit. I think Santi Aldama on his contract is a pretty good movable contract. Clark's just, until he gets back, it's whatever. But other than that, everyone's on a rookie scale deal or minimum. Niang's expiring. Kyle Anderson can be waived right now without taking any money back. So they could afford, like, let's say they could take back 2 first-round picks for taking on Jakob Poeltl. They could afford to do that now better than any other team. So, I trust where they're going with this. I trust their front office with all these picks more than just about any other front office. Do you think this makes it more likely they move Morant now, or are they just chilling now that they have all these picks?
I think you'd like to move Morant now just to, kind of turn the page. I also think they've now made it so clear that they are willing to take on bad money for the sake of assets. I do wonder, are there bad contracts out there that you could trade John Morant for and get picks back? I don't see any immediately. Like maybe now they go back to New Orleans and they reconsider something with like Jordan Poole and DeJounte Murray for John Morant, where you're also getting picks back from the Pelicans somehow.
Oof.
Maybe that's a thing. I mean, like,
wow.
I think if you're not thinking, like, the idea that they were going to get like trade value for John Morant as an asset independently was probably gone, right? We didn't see that trade anywhere. So the next stage down was, could you do what the Hawks did with Trae Young and just trade him for expiring money and maybe like a mid-level-ish salary role player in Corey Kispert? I didn't see that trade out there anywhere either. So I think if they were going to make any trade in that vein, it was going to be Miami if they didn't get Giannis, or the Bucks if they do trade Giannis, but not in such a way that facilitates a tank, where like the Bucks could just use John Morant as their bridge star, their guy to sell tickets while they figure out the next era. If neither of those materialize, now you're just looking, can you turn that into bad money some other way where you're getting picks back to do it? I don't see that many. The New Orleans thing is the only idea that comes to mind. I would assume they are willing to do not anything to get rid of him. They're not going to pay to get off of John Morant,
Right.
but I think they're probably prepared to do just about anything that they need to.
Yeah, I just don't know who the teams are other than maybe Miami at this point. If they lose out on Ja, maybe the Bucks. I mean, on Giannis, maybe the Bucks as part of a bigger Giannis trade. Those are really the only two that stand out. Obviously, the Clippers and Cavs or the Pelicans.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Who?
Anthony Davis makes a good deal more than John Morant, and the Mavs would love to duck the tax. Their contracts are the same length, I think. I wonder if the Mavs would do Anthony Davis straight up for John Morant with the idea that all their value is basically ducking the tax. And then the Grizzlies could turn around and try to trade Anthony Davis for value over the summer.
I don't think the Grizzlies do that, but maybe I think the Mavs might have to throw in something. I don't know what that something is. That's really tough to make up. But as far as the Mavs, I think that makes a lot of sense given their situation. If they brought in John Morant, they could still, he wouldn't hurt their tank this year. Anyone else you think could jump out and swoop in?
Not that many. Like, I would have thought about Joel Embiid before he started playing well, but now I think that ship has kind of sailed. Joel Embiid, they're probably just, I mean, I guess they'd trade him if a good offer came, but I don't think they're eager to do that. I think they just like their team. Should we talk about Utah now?
Yeah, so I was about to pull up their draft pick. So as far as their top 8 protected pick, they're going to keep it. They just need to stay top 6. Like if they're top 4, then it's 100% guarantee they keep it. But if they're top 6, it's a 96% chance they're going to keep the pick. Right now they're top 6. Like after that, then it's like the Bucks, Mavs, Grizzlies. Can they break in? Yeah, it's possible. But the Jazz have been on top of their shit. They have been, as I said, just not playing all their best guys. They found the right combination to lose. So I think they'll keep their pick. With Jaren, the one thing that I think the value is like almost what I predicted. I thought the Grizzlies can get a little more. It probably came up a little short because of his contract. I'm not going to call it a bad contract, but now that he signed that extension like right at the peak of his performance as a player, and if this is the player he's going to be, I'm apprehensive he's going to be like truly worth the money he's going to be making on this extension. So there is a scenario where the Jazz may be overpaid a little bit. We'll see how good Jaren is. I anticipate he's going to do a lot better. I think Will Hardy's a smart coach. I think he's going to make it really work. And then the Jazz, they still have, they don't have like a big surplus of picks anymore. They just have like one pick in every draft. they have an extra in 2029. So I wouldn't just anticipate they don't really. Maybe they trade a couple more picks. Tony Jones from The Athletic was saying he doesn't think the Jazz are done. So, and he's very plugged in with them. So we'll see if they do anything else. So yeah, as far as the type of player I'd want to pair with Lowry, I think this is a great pick. And it's realistically in the wheelhouse for the Jazz. I don't think they were really going to get anybody better with their cap space. They were going to have like 50 million in cap space in the 26 offseason. Jaren Jackson is better than anybody who is realistically even available, not just attainable to the Jazz, but actually available out there. So I liked where the Jazz were heading anyways with Keontae George. I think he's going to be an all-star eventually. Lowry just continues to play really well. Now they got two of these guys that were renegotiated into these max deals. So, you know, the Jazz, they can't pick their stars, their all-stars, given, you know, they're not really that type of city, that type of team, but they're getting who they can. I think the value's fine. And I think I'm 100% with you. I think they're going to be like Houston from the past few years. They're going to be the playing team next year. I'm pretty confident. They're already like poking at it as it is until they have to start sitting players out.
Some housekeeping here. First, financial. The Jazz now have 2 max contracts with Lowry and Jaren Jackson. Walker Kessler, restricted free agent. What, you think like 25 a year is probably the range for Walker Kessler?
I would say a little closer to 20, maybe like somewhere in, like exactly in between 22 and a half.
Yeah, somewhere in that range, basically. They have Keontae George extension eligible. I think the small guard just value crater over the last year. They probably will be able to get Keontae George on something less than a max, but he's going to be very expensive. So all of a sudden, the Magic, their books are, or the Jazz, their books are going to look a little bit like the Magic's, where they have Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner on maxes, Desmond Bane on a max as well, and Jalen Suggs on something very expensive as well. I trust the Jazz to manage that financially. They have 3 more years of Ace Bailey on a rookie deal. They'll have their number 8 pick or top 8 pick this year that will be on a cost control deal. I trust them to find depth, but that's just something to keep in mind. Like most of their financial flexibility, save for like maybe a mid-level contract or something over the summer, is probably spent. As far as the draft goes, what this trade reminds me of a little bit is the Pascal Siakam trade between Indiana and Toronto. What Indiana did in that trade that I felt was so smart was they did trade 3 first-round picks, but all of them were within the next 3 years. So what that did was it basically set them up to compete in the near term without exhausting their ability to make major changes to the roster in the near future. So after this season, in fact, now I think even right now, Indiana is fully pick neutral, right? They traded 3 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam 2 years ago, and they're fully pick neutral now. So if they wanted to make another trade, they have no restrictions hampering them from doing so. The Jazz traded 3 picks in this deal. One of them is 2031 from another team, so it doesn't affect their own picks at all. And the other 2 are in 2027, so we'll in 18 months just be past that draft. So starting in the 2027 offseason, they'll be able to trade a full draft again. I'm not saying they will, but I think when we think of trading 3 first-round picks, we tend to think of a team really hamstringing itself from a step-in and an asset perspective. The Jazz didn't really do that here. They kind of just traded their surplus. Otherwise, they're basically going to be okay. Yeah. Then there's the basketball of it all, which I think is very, very interesting. If you look at the roster, they have a lot of guys who are like playing one position down from where you'd expect, like Jaren Jackson. I think there were teams that would have traded for him and played him at center. I think he's better suited playing power forward. It's harder for him to rack up fouls that way. He's obviously not a very good rebounder. His shooting is fine for a power forward. I think him and Walker Kessler is going to be just a killer rim protecting duo, one of the best in the NBA. So I think, like, especially given their defensive deficiencies on the perimeter, that duo just makes a ton of sense moving forward. You have Lauri Markkanen probably moving to the 3. I mean, he can do it. It's going to be an issue on defense. It's going to at least give you a ton of size and create some matchup issues on offense on the other end. Ace Bailey going to be a 2. I thought he was a 3, or at least I think that's his best position. And Keontae George is 6'4". Like, he's not like big for a guard, but he's not small either. They have a very big team, which I think is going to make up for the fact that George, Bailey, Markkanen is not like a great defensive trio for the perimeter, and they're going to protect the rim so well that I think that'll give them at least a solid defensive baseline, and they can figure out the perimeter as they go. They still have assets. They'll still have this pick this year. So I think they've given themselves a very interesting identity. I think Will Hardy's creativity is going to serve them very, very well. They'll be able to mix and match lineup wise where like Jaren Jackson will play most of the game at power forward, but like Walker Kessler isn't sacred. If you want to close the game with Jaren Jackson at center, you can do that. So I feel pretty optimistic about where they are. It's a smart organization, a great coach. I think they'll be a top 6 team in the West next year.
They're ready. And they still have a bit of that John Collins trade exception. I think based on how they're going to structure all of it, they go from 18 million up to 12.2. So they could still get some more picks if they want to take on a bad contract. But like their core is basically set. You got the forwards in Markkanen and Jackson. You got Walker Kessler, presumably re-signing. Keontae George is their guard, their lead guard. And then between Ace Bailey / whoever they might get with their lottery pick, like, how much more do you need if you're the Jazz? Yeah, it took a while. A lot of guys, some of the guys along the way didn't pan out, but they are finally there, and they cannot keep like being in the lottery, especially when you have a coach as good as Will Hardy, always getting the most out of the Jazz. So last thing, and then we'll move on to the next thing. How confident do you feel in this group's ultimate highest ceiling compared to the previous group with Mitchell and Gobert? Do you think this will end up being like good enough that it was like worth it to cut off the Gobert Mitchell group when they did?
I mean, they had to cut off the Gobert Mitchell group one way or another. It's just there was no championship ceiling there. You were running into the ground, and Mitchell was like not close to free agency, but close enough that you figured he was eventually going to start making noise. Right now, the ceiling here is not championship. There's not a player on this team that I look at and say, wow, that's like the best player on a championship team. But I think between Keontae George, between Ace Bailey, and between this lottery pick, you have a very, like not very good, but a pretty good chance of one of those guys popping and like, boom, we found our all NBA guy. We have this great supporting cast where all of our positions are set. Let's roll with that. And by the way, if we're 2-3 years in, like if we're having in 2028 a version of this conversation, they still have all their own picks. They could go make another trade. And while Utah is obviously not a very attractive market generally, if they're like a pretty firm 50-win team in 2 or 3 years, maybe then they could recruit somebody. It would have to be a guy with the right mindset, the right point of his career, but maybe then they possibly could.
Or they just get the number 1 pick or a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
Draft the best player and just keep your picks. I don't know what more they need to do other than just, just supplement the depth. All right. So last night we got an earthquake when Chris Mannix reported that the Clippers and Cavs are in advanced stages of a trade that would swap James Harden for Darius Garland. The first thing that came to my head is, why would the Cavs do this? I understand Garland's been injured. He's inconsistent. Like 1 year, he's really at his peak level, and then he might drop off a little bit. But he's 26 years old. I understand Harden's been playing out of his mind at 36. He's an all-star level guard. As far as this season goes, yeah, he's probably going to make the Cavs better in the immediate term. But you really want to give up that upside to just maximize this year and the next year? And if this is the trade, like if you're set on trading Garland, and we'll get into why this is probably an inevitability anyways with the Cavs apron and tax situation, there's no other teams out there interested in Garland. Like, I know that small guards have been killed in the past year, being devalued and such, but you and I were both talking last week how we think Garland is probably worth like multiple first round picks, like 3 firsts. So, okay, maybe we're off on that, but like you don't want any like draft equity. You don't want anything like that for a team like the Cavs that you're already short on picks. You don't want to try to replenish that if you're going to try to help maximize your window with Mitchell and Mobley. So, and that's before getting into the playoff issues, because Harden, he'll save the Cavs regular season. He'll help them rise up the standings. Maybe he could get them to first, maybe second, but I think they're going to try to, they're going to want to get a top seed if they're going to have any shot at making to the finals. Once you get to the playoffs, who knows what you're going to get from Harden. So it sounds like it's going to happen. I just hope the Cavs get at least a first round pick out of it. Any Clippers first, the 30 or 31 would be very valuable.
I was thinking it's probably going to be a swap. That's the compromise here, I think, because the Cavs reportedly asking for some draft capital. We don't know how much. I think this probably settles at a swap. But when I first heard it, just common sense said, like, why are you trading a guy who's a decade younger for a guy who's a decade older? The more I've sat with it, the more it started to make sense to me for a few reasons. Number one, Cleveland has more medical information on Darius Garland than we do. They might just think that he's never going to consistently be the same with the toe. And by the way, like, he's had other injuries in the past. He tore a meniscus in college. He had never played 70 games before last season. He had the broken face, I think it was a year or two ago. Darius Garland has had a lot of injuries over the years. They might just not trust him. The other thing that's looming here is that Donovan Mitchell is set for free agency in 2027. There had been, I think Mark Stein, correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been somebody else, came out and basically said Donovan Mitchell would be on board with this trade. This might have been agitation on his part where, like, I don't think we're good enough. I want us to go out and make a move to improve. They were linked to Giannis by Wendy earlier too. Like, a lot of stuff is in play for Cleveland, and we can get into all of it. This might have been a situation where they just looked at this and said, we are not good enough to win the championship this year. We are not comfortable extending Garland long-term. We don't want to be in a situation where we try to trade him in the offseason and we can't. So this deal is in front of us that at the very least keeps us in the championship race this season and gives us the financial flexibility of, like, I know there's been some saber rattling about Harden potentially wanting an extension. Maybe he does. I don't think Cleveland gives it to him. Or worst case, if they do, it's like 1 year, but I think it's more likely they just guarantee the money on next year's deal because he's only guaranteed $13 million next year out of the $41 million cap figure. I think that's probably the compromise. So I think that's probably where this goes. They probably just look at this and say, we'll be very good with Harden this year and next year. And then we'll pivot after that somehow. If we can get draft picks from the Clippers, great. We'd love to do that. Even if not, this is partially about making this year's team better and mostly about getting off of the Garland contract.
So you're absolutely right in the point that the Cavs, they might have a lot of fears based on the information they have on Garland's injury. And if they were to trade him, especially for no draft picks, and that's a major indictment on that. Not only that their belief in his ability to get back into health or stay healthy for a long stretch of time, but also maybe they don't think he's going to get back to peak form. I'm more optimistic. I feel that especially now, if he's going to be on the Clippers, he'll have the ball more. I think there's another level for him to have. But even if he tops out as the player he was last year, I think the Clippers have to be coming away feeling good, especially just given their situation. They have no control of their picks over 2029. Whatever run that they have, 17-4, climbing out of having the third worst record in the league to being in the play-in, that's great. Like, I don't know how much, that might be a fun little trivia thing. Like, I kind of remember when the Heat did the same thing 10 years ago. Cool. Like, that was fun. But if the Clippers make the playoffs, they're not making any noise. They're not probably going to advance very far at all with the team as it is. So I'm looking at this as the Clippers were just thrown a life raft because this is the oldest team in the league. They are trying to do this cap space plan to reorient the team and change it and make it better and whatever. Like, it's not going to amount to anything. They're not going to get anybody as good as Darius Garland over the next 2 years. Now, Darius Garland wasn't going to be available until 2028. So yeah, the Clippers could have held out until then. Getting Darius Garland for a player 10 years old as James Harden, as good as he is, without giving up any significant draft equity, that just feels too good to be true. So I'm more optimistic on it for the Clippers. But back to the Cavs. It seems like they were going to trade Darius Garland no matter what. Realistically, they're not going to be able to keep all three of Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland. Evan Mobley's making 30% max, which is like probably a little more than the Cavs were hoping he'd be making by kind of getting the injury luck and getting defensive player of the year last year. Garland's making the 25% max. I anticipate that he's going to see somewhat of a correction on his salary when guys like Trae Young, John Morant, etc. They're going to probably get some correction on their salaries in the future. So I suppose that's going to happen to Garland, which makes it even better for the Clippers. If you can keep Garland on less than a max, that's awesome for team building. So, and then you got Donovan Mitchell. He's up for an extension this summer. The 35% max would make him one of the highest paid players in the league, on par with the best guys, Giannis, Jokic, SGA. So Cleveland obviously are picking Mitchell and Mobley in this scenario and then trying to keep their high level of depth. We'll see what happens with Jared Allen. It's kind of mixed with the reporting of what they feel about him, but they still have him, Strus when healthy, Merrill, Jalen Tyson on his rookie contract. So that's the choice that they're making now. They were going to either have to make it maybe next summer or maybe the one after that. And I understand like trading Garland, choosing him to be the one that you're going to cut, just not feeling good about the process in the trade they're ultimately settling with.
Yeah, I don't know what else was out there. Like, I think we had this vision in our head of the Cavs trading Darius Garland for like Trey Murphy. And maybe that was out there 2 years ago. I just think that time had mostly come and gone. I think they maybe could have gotten meaningful draft picks by trading with this deadline, but that would have meant taking back bad salary. Right? Like, could you have gone to Toronto and said, we want 2 first-round picks and we'll take Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett as the money? Yeah, maybe, but that also kind of kills this year's championship hopes, right? Like, I think they're looking at this weak East. I think they view that as such an important opportunity that they weren't going to do anything that made them worse this season. And they didn't. Like, I think about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade for Minnesota. Part of the motivation there was that they were probably worried that if they'd waited another year, nobody would take Karl-Anthony Towns because that was the direction the Aprons were pushing the NBA. And lo and behold, look at the struggle the Knicks have had turning Towns into anything that they can flip for Giannis. I wonder if the Cavs were afraid of something similar playing out where they were going to be stuck with Garland in a world where nobody wants any small guards. Like, I almost look at this and think like they were playing a game of musical chairs and they grabbed the first chair that they could. Maybe it wasn't the most comfortable one, but it was the one that was out there. As far as the Clippers goes, I think there's a lot to unpack here. Everything you said as far as this being a life raft is accurate, and I like the idea of having Garland and Zubats as kind of this, maybe not like they're not building blocks, they're not like the best players on a very good team moving forward, but they're going to hopefully keep you respectable enough that when that potential best guy becomes available, you're able to pounce. Say you don't give up any picks in the Garland for Harden swap. You hold on to your picks from 30, 31, 32. Maybe you wait until the summer of 27 when 33 and 34 are available. You use that cap space and it's like, we're going to trade 3 picks and 2 swaps for an awesome wing to fill in alongside Garland and Zubats, and that'll be our team. Or we're going to use our cap space and we maybe don't get a star, but we're going to get somebody very good or 2 or 3 guys who are very good to fill in alongside Garland and Zubats. Is that the upside that the Kawhi Paul George team had? No, probably not. But at least it's a direction. At least there's some measure of hope. I also look at this, and I don't know what his value is. If you're trading James Harden, don't you have to look at trades for Kawhi? Aren't you admitting that this era is basically over? We can talk about what those trades would look like. There are a lot of teams for whom I think Kawhi Leonard makes sense, but you have the aspiration stuff hanging over everything. You have his injury risks hanging over everything. And you have the fact that like he might not be eager to go anywhere outside of Los Angeles hanging over everything. So if I were the Clippers, I do think if anybody's willing to offer me anything of value for Kawhi, the optics of giving the Thunder a better pick really doesn't matter to me that much. I would just kind of like to turn the page, hand the team over to Garland and say, like, you're our guy. We're going to figure this out around you in the years to come. So, like, do you want to go through Kawhi teams?
Yeah, and before we get into it, I would agree at this point that if the Clippers were willing to do this trade, swap Harden for a much younger guard with a lot more upside that gives this team a lot of much needed upside, I anticipate at this point they would take a similar type of package for Kawhi. that's a lot harder than it's easier said than done because Kawhi is a wing and teams aren't going to just give away good wings. Like right now, you could get a guard for a pretty good guard for nothing right now. But I would have guessed that if the right offer comes along, whether that's a certain type of player, maybe the right draft equity, I think they'll probably listen. I think at this point, just like a matter of what does Kawhi want? Does he want to stay with the Clippers? Then they'll probably just hold on to him. It seems like he just likes being a Clipper and wants to stay there. Has the aspiration stuff changed things? Perhaps. By the way, are we not sure that, like, what changed between the offseason when Harden signed with the Clippers and now? Obviously, the Clippers had this bad start and then they're playing really well. Aspiration happened. Like, what are the odds that when the aspiration thing happened, James Harden asked the Clippers, hey, you think I could get some of that aspiration money? And they said no. And now here we are.
No comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
First of all,
Kawhi teams by Sam Quinn. Go.
First of all, Kawhi does not have the equity in the organization anymore to be like, yeah, guys, I don't know. I think I'd kind of like to be here. I'm sorry. After all of the headaches that he has put that team through, if they get a good offer, I see no reason why they wouldn't take it. But the hang up here is you'd have to work with the league office, get a sense of like what happens if the investigation finds that his contract is voided. Can we void the trade and do it back? Like, could you agree not to void the contract? I don't know. You'd have to do something with the league office. Anyway, the obvious one, the first one that comes to mind, because he doesn't want to leave Los Angeles, would be the Lakers. The Lakers have $40 million in expiring contracts very easily that they could do, which would be Rui Hachimura, Maxi Kleba, and Gabe Vincent, and then maybe you throw in DeAndre Ayton. Maybe it's Jared Vanderbilt. He's longer money. The Clippers might not want that. Some meager draft asset like a swap, maybe a first-round pick. It's not much, but at least it kind of hits the fast forward on your cap space. Then the other possibility, which because of the no trade clause is unlikely, but just worth throwing out there, is LeBron for Kawhi. If you could do that as the Lakers, I would 100% do it. I don't know why LeBron would want to go to the Clippers. I don't think playing with Garland and Zubac is that appealing, but we had to bring it up. But do you agree the Lakers aren't going to give up like meaningful draft value to do that?
I don't think anyone has to give up meaningful draft value to get Kawhi right now. I think you look at the Jimmy Butler trade last year, he went for 1 first-round pick and some reasonable depth like Wiggins. I think that's what the Clippers are realistically looking for Kawhi right now.
So as far as player value goes, could you see the Clippers doing any better than Julius Randle? Like hypothetically, say Minnesota just gave up Mike Conley, so they have less matching salary to work with. That trade's not official. You could just fold this into that.
Yeah.
Would you do as Minnesota like Julius Randle and Rob Dillingham for Kawhi Leonard? It's pretty good, right? If Kawhi's healthy, it's pretty special.
I want to say, if I'm the Wolves, yes. And I say this as someone who's like much lower on Julius Randle, who's kind of been a little higher on him recently, mainly seeing how well he's been able to play as a second and third option on a different team. My fear was that whatever he's doing on the Knicks, like he's not going to replicate that elsewhere. That was just Tibbs. That was like a major coaching victory by Tibbs, getting all that out of Randle. But I was worried that Randle wouldn't be able to do as well off the ball. So now, like, I think he's increased his value. With that said, I think I would take the chance on Kawhi, given all his knee issues. I don't think he's that much older than Randle. So yeah, just for Randle and Dillingham, I think that might be worth the risk at this point for the Wolves.
If that worked, like I know it's narrow with Kawhi, but if you got 4 healthy rounds out of him, like you could win the championship, like here and now. This isn't a hypothetical. This isn't, oh, we're building some team, then 2 or 3 years could maybe do it. Like that puts you on par with Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Can you imagine a defense with Kawhi, Gobert, McDaniels, and Edwards? Like, oh man, would that be good? Would you have the secondary scorer that you'd need? Oh man, that would be good.
I'm starting to wonder if I'd rather just do that than do all the surgery needed to get Giannis. And the ESPN seems to hint like, hey, that's still in play, and Minnesota can make it happen.
Yeah. I think I would take Giannis just for the longer runway and less injury risk, although Giannis has his own injury risk now. But I'm thinking about it. I think it's very interesting. And if you're the Clippers, And you could walk away from this whole saga with Garland, Randall, and Zubac without having traded any picks. I can't see that like you coming out with this any better than that, right? Like, because then maybe you trade your picks for a wing at some point. Now you're kind of in business. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty interesting one. I think that's probably my favorite. What about Detroit?
Yeah. Detroit. So after the trades they did, I just want to pull up their cap sheet just because. Have I updated it? Yes. We know with aggregation rules. Now that they brought in Herder and Sarge, I just put in that they waived Bobby Clintman. They're gonna have to waive somebody. We don't know who that is going to be yet. If they were gonna do a trade for an MPJ or in this case Kawhi, okay, you're gonna have to put Tobias at this point to get closer to that 50 million. You can't aggregate Herder. I think you want to try to keep Duncan. So you're looking at Tobias and LeVert, but they're going to have to trade at least like one first round pick. Hey, the Pistons, they swapped their pick this upcoming draft for the Wolves pick. They moved up 6 spots. So instead of trading 29th, most likely, now they're looking at 23rd. I don't know if that helps with this in this iteration of the trade. What do you think? What else do they need to give up?
I like the idea, like them trading up from 30 or 29 to 23. That could help with Porter Jr. too. I think that was just a clever little move. Yeah, I think it's just matching salary and a first round pick, right? Like, I wouldn't give up multiple picks for Kawhi Leonard. There's just too much risk there. But if you're talking about one first round pick and, contracts, sure, I don't see what the harm is there. You loop in the Minnesota trade. Maybe you send out Herder as your matching salary along with Tobias, and that gets you most of the way. Like, I think that mostly works. And if Kawhi worked for the Clippers, you're the easy favorite in the East, and you could maybe win the championship here and now. Like, that's exactly the player they need. Isn't Kawhi just the best possible version of Michael Porter Jr.?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so
pretty spot on. Yeah.
Houston, Fred VanVleet, Dorian Finney-Smith, Steven Adams, and throw in whatever draft pick you have to throw
in. I don't know. I think I'd rather have the depth if I'm Houston. I think I trust enough between KD and then whatever Jabari eventually becomes, and then Amen obviously taking steps up. I feel like that's still enough offensively. I don't know if I want to dip into the depth for another expensive player like Kawhi. Like the other teams, he definitely raises their ceiling. This one, yeah, he raises their ceiling, but maybe in the long run, they're losing a little bit in Jabari and Amen. I think I'd rather keep them.
Yeah, I think they were never trading Jabari and Amen, to be clear. Like, that's off the table. But I think Houston's ceiling is already high enough, and maybe not this year because of the injuries, but I don't think the Rockets have to be rash. I would rather just hold on to stuff, keep building the culture that you have, hold on to your picks. But that's an interesting one. And then the most fun one, well, maybe not the most fun, but maybe the most sentimental would be Toronto, just setting him back. I guess it would be like RJ Barrett, and could you get them to take Jakob Poeltl? Probably not, but they have all their own picks. So like maybe one pick to dump Poeltl and another pick to get Kawhi.
Well, I think they got to trade like 2 first at least. So that's
one of them is stick on Poeltl. Yeah.
Same thing like when we discussed if you mentioned the Cavs, would they want to do a Garland trade to Toronto and take that package back? Same type of deal with Kawhi for the Clippers. Did you mention the Spurs at the beginning?
I didn't. I thought about that, but truthfully, about a year ago, I tweeted something about how the Spurs should retire Kawhi's number. And I have gotten a lot of vitriolic responses on Twitter over the years. I have never gotten more they hate him in San Antonio. I don't think I don't know about the organization anyway. That fan base would never accept him back.
I'm just looking at the Spurs, what they would have to offer potentially. If I'm the Clippers, I think I would prefer more than almost everything else we discussed if you can get Devin Vassell and one first back. And I'm not saying this thinking Devin Vassell is going to be some amazing starter or anything like that. But I think there's still a little bit of upside there. And just putting Kawhi on this Spurs team with the guards, that's what they need. Just one big wing, a really good second option there at the wing. Yeah, you're probably right. That bridge is probably burned, but
they're not getting a pick in that deal. If you could get Vassell and expiring contracts for Kawhi, that's a huge win for the Clippers. But the Spurs aren't doing that. I also just think Kawhi's kind of a weird personality, And the Spurs just seem to genuinely love each other in a way that very few basketball teams ever do. So I don't think they would mess with that for like, the board man. I don't know. I don't think that's really a personality fit anymore. I think that covers my Kawhi teams. Do we have anything else on? Do you want to talk about the Cavs Giannis stuff?
I mean, really quickly, I don't think there's too much to discuss. Go ahead.
I think if the Cavs are willing to give up Evan Mobley, they could get Giannis, and if they're not, they won't. And I don't think they're willing to give up Evan Mobley. And I would have other questions. Like you'd probably have to find a way to swap Jared Allen for Miles Turner in that situation, because I don't think Giannis and Jared Allen would work well together. And at that point, you've traded away 3 of your starters and you've totally overturned most of your team. I don't think it's likely, but I don't know. Like, I guess it's out there. And if the Cavs are being aggressive, I would have been more interested in this if they'd kept Garland or were keeping Garland because of the continuity value there. But I think it's just a little bit too much.
This Garland trade feels to me that they might be willing to trade Mobley for Giannis, in which case they have the best offer, and that anything that could interest the Bucks,
except for the Blazers picks, I think. Well, actually,
you know what? I don't know. I think despite Mobley stalling, like he hasn't gotten worse, he just kind of stalled. I think I'd rather just take the bet on Mobley getting better.
Yeah, what I think would amount to as your plan is you have a high lottery pick this year, and then you're just kind of rolling with that guy and Mobley, and you have Turner and Rollins or whatever, and you just have time, right? Where like for the next 2 or 3 years, you could figure it out. Mobley under contract through 2030. In like 2027 or 2028, you could say like, okay, what do we have? What do we need? Should we trade 2 picks for some guy? Could we get Evan Mobley a sidekick if we didn't draft that guy organically? Like, it's time more than anything. And I get it. It's just such an overhaul of your team.
I just, for the Bucks, if you're bringing in Mobley, chances are he might be by himself worth more than the extra picks the Bucks owe right now. Where if they needed to liquidate him, just get a bunch of picks back, I think they'd get more value that way through trading him. So I don't know. I don't expect it to happen. It's just about preferences. Would Giannis be open to that? That's kind of what it comes down to. It's just interesting that Brian Windhorst talked about that they talked about Anthony Davis. They talked about Giannis. Like it's Evan Mobley. Undoubtedly, that's who'd be in play. But I would anticipate this might be more of an off-season thing.
I'd feel kind of the same way. And the other thing is, if you're getting Harden and Giannis obviously have their history together where they are not friends. So are they cool with that? The other part of that too is that Harden and Mitchell and Giannis, I typically don't like the just one ball thing. But Harden obviously has to have the ball to be effective, and Giannis wants to be a point guard, and Mitchell obviously is, the best player on the team and wants to have the ball a lot too. I don't know that that's really optimizing those guys.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I think whatever bad blood, whatever rivalry they have, that's so long ago, so I could see them getting together for it. But as far as the basketball fit, I do have questions. Yeah. Okay.
Should I go through the LeBron situation just quickly? Because it's not feasible, but I just want to lay that out. So as it stands right now, Cleveland is $14 million above the second apron. They would have to duck the second apron entirely so that they could aggregate salary. And then they would have to match LeBron's money, which would be very, very difficult. That would basically have to be a 5-for-1 trade. Technically 6-for-1 because they'd have to get under the apron. So the basic structure would be Dennis Schroeder would have to go to the Nets, and you're paying them off with, a swap or a pick or seconds or whatever. You'd probably have to send Lonzo Ball to the Hornets, which was my favorite fake trade of the day, favorite rumor of the day anyway. Let's unite the Ball brothers. And then you're matching LeBron with Jared Allen, Max Strus, and Dean Wade. And from there, you wouldn't have enough room under the second apron to fill out the rest of your roster. So you'd also have to put Sam Merrill in the trade. So basically, the team that you would have when all of this was done would be a starting lineup of LeBron, Mitchell, Tyson, Mobley, and forgetting one guy.
I got it all out right there. You can
and
see.
you'd have Keon Ellis off the bench. So like, is that really worthwhile? I don't. Oh, Harden, Mitchell, Tyson, LeBron, Mobley, and Keon Ellis off the bench. You'd have a 6-man team, and you'd have to sign like 8 free agents or something crazy like that, or 5 or 7 or 6 or something. I don't think it's worth it. By all means, LeBron, come in the offseason for the minimum. It's not really feasible during the season.
Yeah, I don't think any of it's feasible right now for the Cavs. Well, they'll do the Harden swap. They have the chance of them going out trading Mobley for someone like a Giannis. I think is increased. I need to look more into it though. I haven't really wrapped my mind around it.
Can we just very quick? If you were going to trade Evan Mobley, is there anybody out there you'd rather do it for than Giannis? Just hypothetically, like look around the league. Evan Mobley is a very, very valuable trade asset.
Chet.
Is there a guy on another team that you might rather have than Mobley
Chet Holmgren
or than Giannis? Chet Holmgren? I mean, would the Thunder do that?
Yeah. You just asked me. That's my answer. But it's like to show that level of guy. And at least if not that level of Giannis, like with Chet, I think with his trajectory, I would want him. I would swap him outright for Chet Holmgren for sure. But yeah, it's very few guys.
Yeah, I'm looking around the league just because bigs feel so scarce right now. There really isn't anybody that I see that I'd be super eager to do that for because they already have their guards set. So yeah, I don't really see it, but it was worth the conversation.
So really quickly, it's 5:18 where you are. How are you doing on time?
I have to leave at 5:40, so I think we can kind of go semi-quickly through that weird Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit trade. Let's do Boston first, actually.
Okay.
Because I think that's a very interesting trade.
All
so we have talked a lot about the Celtics potentially ducking the luxury tax. In trading Anthony Simons for Nikola Vucevic, they have gone from around $12 million above the tax line to around $6 million over the tax line. It is very important for them to duck the tax this year and next so that they can reset their repeater clock. They are a repeater taxpayer this year. And given how expensive that roster is and how expensive that roster is going to be going forward and how little we know about ownership's appetite to spend because they did just they did have a change in ownership, it is important for them to reset the clock. I'm not quite sure how they plan to go about this now because Simons was kind of their ticket, right? We had talked a lot about a Simons for Nurkic trade kind of in that vein, because that's like an $8.5 million difference, I think, or something in that range, where at that point you could probably just play the minimum game and the, 14 days with less than 14 players nonsense and prorated minimums and figured it out. I don't quite know what their path is. I only see 2. Number 1 would be trading Sam Hauser, and number 2 would be retrading Vucevic. So what do you think about where Boston is right now?
So just to clarify about the repeater tax situation Sam laid out, if they duck the tax this year and the next year, then between 2027 through 2030, so that's 3 seasons, the Celtics would be standard taxpayers. That would open up a runway for them to spend as much as they want. Spend like the type of money they did during their championship run without the money without those crazy multiples. You spend like an extra $2 per tax level you're in the repeater tax. So to your first suggestion, can you do minimums? So that means can you dump like Tillman, Garza, Mina, just hypothetically? Okay, like that kind of gets you under the tax, but now you are at 11 players. You need to still fill up 3 guys. Maybe they could do it if they dump a 4th minimum guy. I think that would work. Get your cursor
off of Keita. No. Get your cursor off of Keita.
I meant Boucher. So, like, if they clear 4 minimum guys, that works. They should be able to refill the last 4 spots while staying under the tax. They still have 4 second-round picks after doing the trade. They did a pick swap with the Bulls, and they're in this Simons for Vucevic, a second-round pick swap in that trade. So they still have the ammo to go this route. We'll see if this is viable and how much, if they really want to use up all their seconds to do it. So that's path number 1. Path 2, which is probably the more likely, I would say at this point, they trade Hauser. Can you get actually some positive value for him? Maybe multiple seconds. And if you just take back a player making half his amount, that's it. You're in. You deduct the tax. Boom. Actually, no, a little less than half. If you can bring back like a minimum player, I think that'd be the goal.
I would have
Then
rather
there-
Detroit gone for him than Kevin Herter. I think that would have made more sense.
Hey, the trade's not official. Maybe they could loop in the Celtics on this and send Vucevic to that other
There
trade
should be a
that
market
the Bulls have.
for Hauser, yeah.
Rerouting Vucevic. It seems like they're going to keep him based on what we've seen so far. Like Shams tweeting the Photoshop image of Vooch in the Celtics jersey seems like that seems like enough of an indication that they plan on keeping him unless something like a much better, cheaper center comes out, because they need a big man like Vooch. I think it's nice that while Kata's been playing as well as he is, none of their other big men you could really like depend on in the playoffs. I don't think that's like a for sure thing. So now that you have Vooch, not only do you have a guy who could split the time with Kata, but gives you another flavor of a big man, a guy who could stretch the floor a little bit offensively, which I think Mazzulla is going to get a lot out of him. So I know a lot of Celtics fans are upset that they traded Simons. He was playing so well, but in the long run, they're going to run into problems if they don't get out of the repeater tax. So, it was a good, fun time while it lasted, but they still have a pretty good level of shooting. Vucevic has been shooting the ball really well these past few years. So I think they will be, at worst, a net neutral by this move as far as the on-court product goes.
Also, I mean, we don't know if Jason Tatum's coming back. I know the reporting lately has been a little bit more conflicting. He's considering not coming back. Getting Jason Tatum back, even in a compromised state, that's it. That replaces Anthony Simons, and now you've added the center that you need. I think this makes plenty of sense. And by the way, if they weren't getting Tatum back, then this year was kind of a wash anyway. So, saving money is what ultimately matters.
Yeah. I think either way, they're the same team that they were before making this trade. Maybe they'll be a little better because they still retain the shooting. They just have it in a position of need. So we'll see. Maybe this makes them a better team. Maybe they could make a deeper run after this. So the Bulls do this with the Bulls. The Bulls now haven't even updated their cap sheet. It's kind of a mess right now. No, actually I have it all here. They've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yuki Kawamura 2, 8 point guards on the roster now. So it's really hard to judge the Bulls right now because they still are going to have more. They're still not done. They're going to do more stuff. I think Kobe White's now, like, if not just in play, like very likely to be moved. Same thing with Ayo Dosunmu. I figure they brought in Simons because they genuinely like him. Like, why else are you helping the Celtics save a bunch of money just for a pick swap?
Did you see the pick they got though? It's the most favorable of several second round picks this year that includes New Orleans. So that might be like the number 32 pick.
Oh, that came out?
Yeah, hang on. I have it right here in front of me. From Keith Smith to Boston, Denver gets 2027, or Boston gets Denver's 2027. Chicago gets most favorable of several different second round picks in 2026, including New Orleans, which is going to be like 31, 32, 33.
Okay.
So that's
nice.
Very good second round value.
Okay. That's worth it. That 26 pick they're sending out. Yeah. Nuggets 27. Yeah. That's not going to be a value. Nice. Good work by the Bulls then. But
very smart deadline for the Bulls so far, by the way. Just out of character for them, but they've done very, very well. And I have a soft spot for Jaden Ivey, who they got in the next trade that we're going to talk about. I just like what they've done. Like, they've added picks. They have not had any illusions about like maintaining viability for the play-in. They'll probably make the play-in anyway because it's the East, but they haven't like focused on, how do we make this year's team work? They're using their money to get picks, and they're not taking on long-term money. I know they'll have to re-sign Ivy if they want to keep him, obviously, but just good deadline for the Bulls. Smart.
Yeah. I was actually keeping track of their trades between the summer of 2021, like after they did the Larry Markkinen sign and trade and a bunch of other moves. They had only done like three or four trades involving players since, starting with the Giddey Caruso trade. It took them 3 years to make a player trade. So they've done like four trades or three. They've done like a total of four trades now in a year span. I think they've done like four trades now in this trade deadline. So the Bulls can't predict them. Couldn't predict any of these moves. I could have predicted Jaden Ivey maybe like as a Bulls suitor. That kind of made some sense for him. I like that they got him for nothing. They didn't give up a single pick. They, I believe they saved money in this trade, or at least were neutral in it. So all they really had to do was they didn't even really take on Conley's money, like because they send out two like equally pretty big minimum salaries as well. So now they get they get to take a flyer on Jaden Ivey. So I think that's pretty smart. They're not done yet, though. It's really hard to judge. They're probably got like at least two trades left.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about the finished roster in Chicago is going to be because this year doesn't really matter. But I also just like having Ivy's speed next to Josh Giddey. I just think that's like a very interesting conversation, given that, you know, they want to play up tempo. Obviously, they're going to be in transition a lot. I don't know. I'm like what I don't want to say I like what they're building because the big picture is still and iffy. I like how they've spent the last few days. I do want to talk about that next Chicago trade, though. There was an interesting little tidbit where Minnesota trades Mike Conley and effectively a cap dump. According to Windy, apparently the Timberwolves could have gotten Kobe White in that deal, but they didn't. Now the trade isn't probably finalized yet, so maybe that's something they could revisit if they don't get Giannis. I have kind of a little bit of a sinking feeling where, are we sure the A-Rod, Alec, or Mark Lowry front office or ownership is not just trying to duck the tax? And to duck the tax with a team this good, I have some major hangups with that.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably exactly what's going on. And I'm seeing the reports. I see ESPN, they're saying, you know, the Wolves are in play for Giannis. I'm sure they're trying their best to get him. And this trade, kind of like in the same vein as the Cavs, potentially getting under the second apron could help them unlock things. Then the Wolves getting under the first apron, that was gonna probably. I don't think that was really that much of a necessity to do this because they're under the second apron. All they need to do is combine players and not exceed the amount of money that Giannis makes. So Conley would have helped with that. His $10 million could have gone a long way with that. Now, they could still get there very easily with Gobert and Randall, with Randall McDaniels. So I don't know. I am a little concerned about this, mainly because if you're trading for Giannis and you still have Conley left over, don't you want to try to do something with that to help restock your the pieces that you sent out? Try to get a little more size if possible, because you're definitely going to lose some size in a hypothetical Giannis trade. So I think that they're just kind of hedging. It seems like they did this trade to save some money because they probably don't want to do any other option. If they could have gotten Kobe White in this and they clearly decided not to. It just seems like it's Giannis or we're ducking the tax. And that would upset me if I'm a Wolves fan, which if I was a Wolves fan, I would have been pretty upset by the Cat trade. I know Cat's got his issues as a player and the contract, but it was working. Like you made this, you traded all your picks for Gobert for this theory of the team and it worked. And then you just trade him. Thankfully, this trade has worked out for the Wolves, but it was also about the money. So, yeah, the red flags all around for sure.
When the ownership battle was happening, there was reporting from Woj that in some of the documents that the new ownership group had like put out to potential financiers, they were saying that their goal was to duck the tax, I believe, before the 24-25 season. And I remember we all kind of looked at each other like, that's not possible given where they are. To do this now, what it would effectively amount to is from the team 2 years ago, aside from the Cat, Randall, DiVincenzo trade, which I think has borne out well basketball-wise, you would have just let Conley and Alexander Walker and maybe even Dillingham or another contract go for nothing. And it's just like, that tells me this ownership group is maybe not as serious about winning as we hoped. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they expand this trade and like if they don't get Giannis, turn it into Kobe White or turn it into something else. You cannot duck the tax with a team this good. That sends a message to Anthony Edwards that like, oh, you're not going to take this seriously. I know he has a lot of years left on his contract, but these are the things that linger with superstars when they're deciding whether or not to extend. Like, you really can't mess around with this. When the Heat, I can't remember, was it a wave and stretch or was it an amnesty on Mike Miller that really pissed off LeBron? Like, these things do sit with those guys and they matter.
Yeah, and Conley, he's not just anybody that they're salary dumping. He was like he's the big like common line. I'm trying to think of the right word to say. The thread line between before they got to be the Wolves as we know now, this consistent playoff contender, and whatever they were before. Once they brought him in, he was the like cohesive force making it all work. So obviously he's fallen off. The team has outgrown him in a way. So I think they'll be fine as far as that. But yeah, to your point, this stuff does kind of matter. You and I have always kind of had these red flags in our minds that are the Wolves doing everything in their power to do everything right by Anthony Edwards. Like if they traded for John Morant, hypothetically, thank God they're not doing that. That's the type of move that could make it closer for a guy like Edwards to leave. So this is a very minor, version of that. Obviously, it's nowhere close to doing that, but it's just like it's just a small thing that didn't sit right with me.
Hopefully look, if they want to go for Giannis, like that trumps everything. Like, go do it. If you're not getting Giannis, I hope that by Thursday, this trade is not finalized and they kind of reevaluate and say like, okay, now let's do the version of it that has Kobe White in it. Because I actually think Kobe White would really, really help them. And I think he's a lot better than he's looked this year. Like, didn't he average like 27 a game for the last month and a half, 2 months last year after they traded Levine? Like, Kobe White is really good.
Yeah. Hypothetically, I was just thinking about this. Last thing about the Wolves and Giannis. Remember when back in May, when we had our first episode about Giannis potentially getting traded, I talked about the Pacers potentially having a good offer because they could offer Siakam and Mathurin and like some veterans that like could help the Bucks stay relevant. Because since they owe picks, it's going to be hard for them to get him back. They can't really tank all the time. What if the Bucks are just like comfortable doing like a 2-team trade with the Wolves where they're getting back their guys, Gobert, Randall, McDaniels? What if, I don't think that's what's going on, but what if the Bucks are looking at the Wolves and saying, you know what, that's what we want. We want that level of sustained success. Could you see it actually going down that way potentially?
Well, there's one pretty big difference. If you're trading for all the Minnesota guys, you're not trading for Anthony Edwards. Like, right. That's the key. You have to have if you're like building around those guys, you have to have a superstar to make them viable. So I think, again, if it's Minnesota, it's because they're trading McDaniels somewhere for a bunch of picks and Randall somewhere for a pick and Gobert somewhere for a pick. Like, it's a 3, 4, 5-team trade, whatever it is. I don't think there's a version of this. Maybe Milwaukee takes one of those Minnesota guys. They're not doing a trade where they're just getting those players unless they are planning to flip them over the summer or something.
Look, an ownership could be more concerned with trying to stay as good as possible, sell seats, stuff like that.
Well, if that's what you're doing, then go flip all the guys for picks and then trade whatever contracts you have to trade to get John Morant. It's not hard to get a bad salary all-star, right? Like, it's not hard to get somebody who you can put on the front of a program and say, like, we have this guy, come check him out. Like, you could do that with John Morant. There's always a guy like that floating around the league. You have to maximize the actual long-term championship equity that you're getting in a Giannis trade, and that means picks and young guys.
Yeah. In absence of picks, if the Bucks just want to try to be relevant in the short term, last thing, like, what if they can pull off Giannis, Turner, and Kuzma in a 3-teamer where they get Gobert, Randall, McDaniels, and John Morant? I don't know if the money works exactly like that, but like, how do you feel about the Bucks potentially forgoing picks for something at that level?
What you should do if you're trying to be good in the short term is trade Giannis to the Knicks for OG and Bridges, and then go to the Grizzlies and say Kuzma, Portis, whatever matching money for John Morant, because then you'd have John Morant with a shooting big and a bunch of wings. Great. That's what you roll with if you really want to win now, but I don't think they should focus on winning now.
Yeah, I agree. But now that this is the most thought I put on the Wolves as a viable shooter. If they're going to, like, if the Wolves are going to get Giannis within the next 2 days, the Bucks might have to take most of these players now and figure out the rest later. That's all I'm saying. Okay. You have time for one more thing?
We have 3 minutes, so make it quick.
I mean, I think we touched on everything, have we? Yeah, I think we did
everything that's happened today. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, we already did Detroit, sort of. So I think we are good. Thankfully, no trades happen in the past hour and 20 minutes or so. I guess we might as well just wrap it up then. Anything else you want to add?
All right. Read CBS Sports. That's where everything I'm writing is going. So I'm grading trades as they happen. I'm writing stories as things happen. And I'm sure Yossi and I will be back.
Yeah, keep an eye out for me and Sam. I'm sure we'll be back online as soon as we get some more trades. Subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get podcasts. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, leave a review. Follow me and Sam on Twitter and Blue Sky, wherever you get us, so you can see our handles here at Sam QuincyBS, at Yossi Goslin. We have very instant reactions to all the trades happening. So now's the best time of year to follow us. And subscribe to the Third Apron Substack. I just posted about the potential Harden for Garland trade, why the Cavs would do it, all that's good stuff. And we will see you